Okay then, it is August the 20th, Sunday evening, just after the weekly open. I've spent some time getting settled in. I had a pretty eventful weekend. I was AFK most of the time. Hopefully you guys had good weekends as well. Let's go ahead and get into things. Let's do the market outlook and plans for the week ahead. So let's go ahead and start off with the news events. Before I get into this, sorry in advance that I did botch the stuff last week. I thought it was FOMC. I misread it. It was just FOMC minutes, which is something we don't really care about because they're just regurgitating what they've previously talked about. This week, kind of a similar situation. We don't really have anything to worry about. We have things like FOMC speakers and PMI. We don't really care about that stuff, to be honest. The only thing that really might matter at all is on Friday. ECB has Lagarde speaking. That's probably not going to matter either. So at the end of the day, the moral of the story with running over the news events, I've already touched on this, but we'll touch on it again. We don't really give a shit about most of these things, let's be real. The only thing that we really care about is the FOMC and CPI, just because they produce volatility. I don't really care which way the numbers come out, what they have to say, any of that kind of stuff. It's just a good event for day trading is all. So there's really nothing to worry about this week, so we can go ahead and move on from this. Let's go ahead and lightly touch on the boomers. So I don't want to dwell on this stuff too much just because, I'm not actively trading them. But what I will say is that both boomer indexes, the S&P and the NAS, have traded down into significant, kind of support region. So even if these things are going to reverse course and kind of trend back down towards their macro comps, I think that this is probably the kind of dip zone where you could potentially get that dead cat bounce from, which lines up perfectly with the thesis from crypto. So yeah, TLDR is, if you were bearish on these things, I would be a lot more neutral. Because they are in by the dip zones at their yearly bands and at their HVNs. So let's go ahead and get into the market we actually care about. Let's cover Bitcoin. We have quite a few different things to cover here. So let's start off with the high time frame. So basically where we're at is, per our original plan, we wanted to see us straight into this region to, ultimately either play the kind of dead cat bounce scenario where we project off HVN and continue the, to reverse course and downtrend, or we, could potentially be fighting for fresh highs. At the end of the day, it's not really worth worrying about whether we're going to resolve as a dead cat or resolve as, fresh highs. At the end of the day, it makes sense to no longer be bearish. So like I had talked about, I expected everything to play out very similarly to Q2. From a directional standpoint, it did obviously, but from a volatility standpoint, not so much, right? Q2 was super low vol chop. And we got a big nuke this past week, and basically we've aggressively traded down into our by the dip zone. So that's where I'm leaning right now. Basically, anything higher time frame for me right now is only longs. And whether that's going to play out as a dead cat or fresh highs, it really doesn't matter, guys. The expected value on swing shorts is now horrible. You want to basically wait for this current level to be definitively lost before you want to bet on any downside continuation. So basically, in short, I think that, we've already talked about this, but we'll highlight it again, right? We have both last year and current year's VWAP on the, low volume node amongst several other levels. So, the macro composite from last year's high. So 25K is super strong support. We are arguably quite oversold into that. So basically, if we see it like a kind of a little bit of blood at the beginning of the week, I think you want to fade that to take it up. And, at the very weakest, we maybe would see 28K, and more reasonably, I'm going to see us trading up towards 29K. So the EV on that's pretty good because you're talking about like 1,000-point stop for several $1,000s of upside. So that's pretty much it for what I'm leaning for the higher time frame. That would get invalidated if we don't see kind of that reversion on the bounce and we see sluggishness and start to see a distribution built below the low volume node. That's going to be acceptance below 25K for me, and then I would be trying to swing short down into the 20 to 18K region. But as it stands now, the EV on shorting is really bad. So I would not be fussing around with shorting, even though I could absolutely see us trading down at the beginning of the week. For a higher time frame, I think that we want to lean into buying it. So TLDR is I absolutely want to look for the swing long up into dead cat territory. So I am going to lean in the direction of it being a dead cat to protect myself. Right, you don't want to sit there and anticipate that it's going to be fresh highs before you have any real indication that that's going to be the case. Obviously, we want to pay attention to what kind of information is coming into the market. If it looks like we've bottomed out, we start to trade up, and then we revive the ETF stuff again. Then all of a sudden, we're probably targeting fresh highs at that point. But I just would caution everybody to not get too carried away with the pessimism. I'm sure people are talking about how the trend is over and stuff. And even if the trend is over, I think that it's a very high chance that we're going to get a dead cat bounce from here. Just because the trend has been up all year long. Trends don't just turn around on the flip of a switch. Just because you have one big, minus 15% nuke doesn't mean that the trend is going to just immediately die off. The way that trends play out is they take a long time. It's like on higher time frame, think of it like how big ships in the water, right? They don't turn quickly, right? It takes a very long time. So think about it in the same way. So that's pretty much it for higher time frame, right? Basically TLDR, buy the dip. Let's get into medium time frame here. So these are kind of the three scenarios that I'm looking for. Two of them are long scenarios and one of them's crab scenario. So it would not surprise me at all to see us crab it up a bit here before we start to move directionally again. Following big events where there's a lot of volatility and people are arguably getting quite blown out. Generally, it's pretty common for the market to kind of stabilize and compress around a range before making any sort of directional move. So basically, if we start to kind of trade up and start to look like we're accepting, back into the, upper 26s, lower 27s, then I could see that as kind of a breakout long scenario. Definitely not the kind of setup that I want to take. This would probably be my least favorite setup that I could take, just because it's essentially breakout trading, which is not my forte. But you got to be prepared for everything. So this could obviously be a scenario. The main thing that I'm hoping for is that we kind of trade down and try to basically sweep the lows and source liquidity. I find it very unlikely that we're going to trade up without this kind of move. I can't speak to how legacy markets necessarily trade, but in crypto, you pretty much, like I'd say, 9 times out of 10, 9.5 times out of 10, you're going to get that sweep towards the lows before you trade up. And then third scenario to be, prepared for, the day trading side of me is totally welcome to this, but we could just chop it up basically. I am going to cover this range here in more detail on the lower time frame, but it's totally reasonable to expect that we're just going to chop it up a little bit. So kind of chop it up into this kind of sweep setup to trade up for that swing. So basically as far as, medium or lower time frame goes, I'm going to be leading more into reversion for sure. Just because I've definitely experienced that following the large events where volatility really comes through, you normally chop it up and build a distribution before you're going to go any further in any sort of direction. For more information, check out the Paragon group with the link below, where I cover everything from how I trade to how you can develop your own style. So that's pretty much it for Bitcoin. Won't have too much else to cover there. Let's go ahead and get into some altcoin talk here. So most altcoins are just absolutely in the gutter. I'm just going to cover these, really quickly. Obviously, because if I'm considering it to be low expected value to be shorting Bitcoin, then that's going to go, even more extreme for altcoins. So altcoins got absolutely obliterated on that sell-off. And, basically I would be waiting for them to trade up before I was interested in any sort of shorting opportunities. So really quickly, this is kind of an example of what a short would potentially look like, is if, OP was to trade up into resistance. Same thing with the DYDX. If any of these coins want to trade up into significant resistance zones and set off my alerts, then I might, I might be interested in shorting. A lot of coins are going to be in the same category where they're oversold right now. So selling into them is not very smart in my opinion, particularly if you're talking about the coin of the week. So there are a few, coins that are really strong, and shorting into those is obviously unwise. So that, basically most coins are going to fall into this category of, wait for them to pop up and then sell them again. Obviously you want to be mindful of if Bitcoin's going to move into its kind of, major dead cat bounce move like we had just previously covered, then you want to be careful shorting altcoins. So obviously, any of the sell opportunities are mainly contingent upon Bitcoin being in kind of a chop stage. So, I would be cautious with that, and to TLDR everything, very disinterested in shorting any altcoins. I think that the, opportunity on that is very, very low. So let's get into the strong ones. So, Tomo is without a doubt, my favorite coin right now. I've been talking about this for several weeks now. Basically, as soon as we started to build this kind of structure over here, I talked about it looks like we're kind of recreating the Q2, relentless uptrend. Just this was the most orderly trend structure I've seen on a shitcoin in quite some time, and it looks like we're developing a very similar trend structure to that right now. So yeah, I mean, I think that Tomo's for sure a buy the dip kind of coin. Another one that I'm paying attention to is Rune. Rune is really strong right now. I've seen a lot of people on the timeline shorting this one. I would be very cautious shorting it personally. My main thing would be looking for buy the dip opportunities for continuation. So I could totally see this thing trading down a bit, and then I would want to probably buy it, to be honest. That's pretty much it for shitcoins, though. Any of the whatever the flavor of the day cartel coin is, these were some of the more recent ones. I actually am not super in tune with them. What's actually strong right now? I think the BLZ is the strong one still. But any of the whatever the flavor of the day cartel coin is, don't fade it and just literally just do buy long continuations on them, because you're just gonna get run over. BLZ was a perfect example. We talked about that on the Friday stream. It was around 9 cents. It had just reclaimed its, I think, weekly VWAP, and I had talked about I would not short this thing, and from there, right, it continued to trade up, probably 3 or 4 more cents, which is quite a lot when you're talking about a 9-cent coin. So any of these things that just look like total scams, don't short them, until you get the kind of absolute blow off, kind of setup like we've talked about in the group several times now. So yeah, that's pretty much it. We're keeping it short this week. We don't really have a whole lot of stuff to go over. The main focus is for sure swings on Bitcoin pretty much, and intraday, and whatever kind of high tick rate coins there are. So if BLZ was a really good example late last week. There's been several other ones. Any high tick shit coins, I'm probably going to be trying to participate in this week. That's pretty much it for the week, guys. Good luck, everybody, and I'll chat with you guys soon.